Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk this morning on being at the ocean's edge. As many of you know, I've been doing a monthly lecture series on the conjunction of art and spirit, and I've gotten a lot of opportunity over the last year and a half or so to really delve into a lot of modern art and to connect it with a spiritual ideal or with a spiritual investigation, which I've always enjoyed, seeing someone come at spiritual life from a truly independent perspective, well, without any necessarily any spiritual motive or any sort of agenda. And I always like that very pure form of searching, of connecting with life. And so I'm going to share some of that with you today. But before we start, I want to wish everybody who's celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. I think we're halfway through now. We're actually lighting the candles here in the monastery. Even in Swami A's absence, it's become an annual tradition. So happy Hanukkah to those who are watching, and certainly happy holidays and a festive Christmas season on its way just around the corner. I think probably many people's favorite time of year, just a time to think of kindness and giving and selflessness. And so, to start this morning, I wanted to talk about a particular artist who inspired a lot of what we're going to talk about today. His name is Hiroshi Sugimoto, and he is a Japanese photographer. And when he was a young man, he was taken to the seaside for a weekend vacation with his family for the first time. And he describes coming from inland Japan in a valley there, coming to the seashore and going through a tunnel on the highway and coming out outside the end of the tunnel and seeing for the first time in his life this seascape laying out before him. And he had one of those noumenal moments where he knew that for the rest of his life, this was going to be a thing of inspiration for him. And actually, he even went as far as now he's elderly, a little bit older than myself, and has bought a home in the exact location where that tunnel ended, and brought him into this beautiful vista of the seaside. And I'm going to share that this morning with you. I'm going to go into a slideshow here. I want to show you three of his pictures, just to give us a place to start in the mind, a place of meditation as it is. I'm going to show you these three paintings. They were taken in different locations, obviously at different times and under different conditions. But he's in love with this seascape because he talks about the fact that it is the only modern vista that we can stare at and share with the ancients. That this same scene has been visible for thousands of years, and it's the last one remaining completely unchanged. And it was that idea that really captured my imagination. And I went inward and thought, what is the vista now as a human that we share with the ancients? That certainly our vista from inside as souls in a body, as it were, as a metaphor, that we are standing balanced between two infinities, like these pictures, the infinite ocean and the infinite sky, and that vista has been common to everybody always. And I think when we see the ocean, when we see the sky, we're reminded of that infinity. We're reminded of our own precarious balance somehow on the in-between, balanced between our infinite external world and our infinite internal world. He points out that when you look at the ocean, that you see the farthest that you can see on the planet, that the horizon is the limit of your material view. It's as far as the eye can see. And so even though the ocean is representative here of this infinite space, it indeed has a boundary, a limit. And even though the horizon only seems to suggest a limit because the idea of continuance beyond it is there, it's very much like the external world in general, that this view of the planet, this view of the world, this infinite outside, is subsumed by the sky in reality. So this sub-infinity, this smaller infinity, if you will, of the sea, is in fact held and surrounded by the infinite space that the planet itself sits in. And so likewise in our own internal world, our external world is held in the infinity of our internal world. That there is that is the surrounding vessel for all that we experience, all that we know, and all that we see. And how Sugimoto captures that in his image in such a simplicity, in such a way that you can just sit and look at them and have all of these thoughts come to your mind, come to your own understanding. And so as we sit in this space, precariously balanced between our infinite internal and a seemingly infinite external, what brings us to that ocean edge? What tunnel do we come out of in order to perceive this reality, to understand our situation, and to know what to do, as it were, with what we see and what we're faced with? There's a wonderful poem written by Swami Vivekananda that I want to couch this discussion in. He titled it To a Friend. And he starts it in the first two stanzas by saying, the paths of yoga and of sense enjoyment, the life of the householder and the sannyas, devotion, worship, and earning riches, vows, tyaga, and austerities severe, I have seen through them all. What have I known? What have I known? I read that the first time and read it like a poem and just kind of breezed over it and kept reading. And what a huge mistake that was. Look at what Swamiji is saying here. He's come to the ocean's edge. He is looking at all that this world has to offer, whether spiritual or not spiritual. He doesn't just talk about material things. He doesn't talk about having a materialistic perspective. He takes the entire idea of everything that envelops the external world, and he's telling you, I have seen through them all, and what have I known? At this point, you sit silent in just absolute anticipation to open up every ear within your mind and within your body to hear the truth that he's about to speak to us. It's a difficult teaching. It goes for a bumpy ride. He says, I have known there's not a jot of happiness. Life is only a cup of Tantalus. The nobler is your heart, know for certain, the more must be your share of misery. Now, before you tune out in absolute sorrow and depression, hang on, this goes beautiful places. But I wanted to talk about this idea of the cup of Tantalus, because I think this, above all, will bring you to the ocean's edge in your mind, will prepare you for teaching, will prepare you for an understanding, for a moving forward. Here's a picture of the cup of Tantalus. Now, first of all, Tantalus is a Greek, the story of Tantalus. It's a Greek myth from around 1000 BC, anyway, the first millennia BC, before Christ. And Tantalus was a very evil and wicked king, somehow having something to do with the gateway to the underworld. And he gets invited to, which was a very high honor, to Zeus's table to sit with the gods. And he makes a mistake while he's up there. He tries to steal some of the amrita, some of the nectar of the gods, to bring it down for his kingdom. And he gets caught. And later on, as a punishment, he gets banished to stand neck deep in a pond with a bough of a beautiful fruit tree hanging over his head. And this fruit tree dangles this beautiful ripe fruit just out of his reach. And every time he gets thirsty, as he tries to dip his head into the water to take a drink, the level of the water lowers, so that even though he's completely surrounded all the time in water, he cannot drink. And any time he reaches for this bough of beautiful fruit dangling above his head, it just lifts itself slightly out of reach. So because he tried to steal his pleasure from the gods, he's cursed in this way, to always be in the midst of plenty, but to never find any satisfaction, to never be able to slake his thirst or to sate his hunger. And so Swamiji is referencing a cup that was designed to talk about this. And in this cup, it's designed in such that, as you can see, there's a tube in the middle of the cup. And when you fill the cup up to the brim, it actually activates a siphon that is hidden in the stem of the cup so that the cup automatically empties. So if you take more than your share, or you try and fill your cup to the brim, the cup empties. And so it's this same idea that Swamiji is referring to here in the nature of our external infinity. That although we are surrounded by what looks so beautiful and so tantalizing, as it were, that we run to it to try and slake our thirst and to fill and sate our hunger, we never can. Every enjoyment just brings with it a desire for more, and it lingers in a tickling thought, a tickling memory that constantly promises it again and again and again. And so we drink and we drink and we drink, and we are never filled. We are always hungry. And usually what happens in the early days of spiritual life is we just keep drinking and enjoying, not because we're being fulfilled by it, but because we're being distracted by it. It takes us away from the knowledge that we're hungry, that we're thirsty. It lets us forget for a moment that we're not filled, that we're not satisfied. And that's the best that all the world can do for you. It is your Tantalus cup. Try and fill your cup to the brim, and it will empty of its own accord before you even get a single sating sip from that cup. And so he's laying that here. And for us to stand at the ocean's edge is to stand at this realization: you cannot go any farther. There is nothing more there. You can look at this infinity before you, and the only thing you can do is let it be. Let it be what it is. Catch that photographer's vision of it and be reminded of something within that is also infinite and not quite as limited, because it's the interior space that envelops the whole of the exterior space. That, like Swamiji says, he says, I am not in Alameda, that city in California. He says, Alameda is in me. That's an understanding for us to know that this external world is within us, that this vantage point of being set in the precarious position between the two is unreal, that there is only this internal world. He goes on, he says, he gives us a warning. He gives us not just a warning, but the teaching for freedom, for how to find our way through this maze, this puzzle. Thou large-hearted lover unselfish. He's talking about you. Every one of us in our potential, in our divinity, is a large-hearted lover unselfish. That is who we are at birth. That is who we are when the Tantalus of the world has not poisoned our vision, has not made us eternally hungry. He says, know this: there's no room in this sordid world for you. All right? The thing about that teaching is that when we come to these lectures, when we sit down and open the scriptures, we have to ask ourselves a very honest question. What are we looking for? What are we trying to get? Do you think that today you'll learn something that you don't know? Will I be able to find a sentence from the Vedanta that you haven't heard before? Will I give you some secret clue or a code that unlocks the door to your enlightenment? No, you see, that's not it. There's nothing here for you. There's nothing in this world for you. Our challenge is not to learn something new, but to understand what we have heard, to understand what we know, and to have the courage, to have the faith, as it were, to see the world the way that we've been taught that it is. So here, know you can make a difference from this day forward. There is nothing in this world for you. There is no happiness that comes from the world. It's not in your relationships, it's not in your family, it's not in your job or your money, your cars, your wealth. It's not in your moods. It's not in your dream of what a perfect life is. It's not in your comforts or your vacations. It is not there. And if you are still looking in those places, know that you have become addicted to distraction, that you've become addicted to not being able to bear the misery, the sorrow of a hunger, and the confusion of knowing how to slake that thirst, the confusion of how to sate that hunger. There is no room in this sordid world for you. For far, however, for you may travel, he goes on, mounted on the brilliant mental car, 'tis the same ocean of the samsar, happiness and misery whirling on. Now he gives us a very, very, very important clue. For however far you may travel, and that traveling is this life, this identity, this being a body and a mind. He says, mounted on that brilliant mental car, which is your mind, that you are mounted to your mind. You are addicted to your mind. You are addicted to thinking, to knowing, to learning, to doing all the things that the mind can do. But the mind is only doing one thing. It's presenting you with one thought after another thought. And you'll think, oh, but it does so much more, all these experiences. No, every experience that you have is only a thought. Only a thought. And you say, but I'm touching my face. No, you're only experiencing a thought of touching the face. You say to yourself, oh, but I can hear. No, you're being presented with the thought of hearing. Because all of the information going into the mind comes through senses. Sound does not reach the mind. It's encoded in biochemical information that's transmuted through the nerves to the mind. That's what you are watching. The eyes are the same. The smells are the same. All of it is the same. They are all only a form of thought. And you will always be the passive observer of that. And that is why there is no fulfillment there. Thoughts cannot fill you. Thoughts cannot make you happy. Thoughts can only keep you tantalized, looking from one to the next. Can you plug this in? Sorry, the battery is running low. It tells me all of a sudden back there. So to not be tantalized by this being stuck in thinking alone, to know that that's the nature of this world that we live in, that it is all only a thought, that it is all only a phantom, as it were. And that's why Swamiji would tell us this. He says, as long as you're running after these phantoms, it's like going to a movie. Going to a movie is a wonderful entertainment. It's a distraction. It comes and it goes. But after it's over, it's finished. It's not anything that you can take with you. It doesn't give you any lasting satisfaction. Why? Because it was just a light show. It was a play. And life is like that. The scriptures even go as far as to use those exact words. I'm going to switch into a poem now that's actually comes from the Rig Veda, the hymn of creation, translated by Swamiji. He says to us, he says, one mass, devoid of form, name, and color, timeless, devoid of time past and future, spaceless, voiceless, boundless, devoid of all, where rests hushed even the speech of negation. From thence down flows the river causal, wearing the form of desire, radiant, its heaving waters angrily roaring the constant roar, I am, I am. So this he's describing you in your truest nature, that infinite ocean pouring down through this causal river, this experience of existence where the infinite has become broken into 5 pieces, through which you are fed each little tiny piece at a time. And in your search to see that boundless, expansive self, the I am, angrily roaring. Why anger? Because it has forgotten itself and it's searching for itself in the world of these senses, trying to take tiny bits, the bits of the five, I call them, sounds, smells, visions, tastes, touches, all of this infinity, trying to take it through five small spoons, and being angry because it's eating and eating and eating and eating and searching and searching and searching, its existence driving it forward, wanting to know, wanting to see, wanting to understand. But the infinite can never be filled through a finite means. So here it is heaving forward, angrily roaring, the constant roar, I am, I am. Indeed, that is both the bliss and the terror of life, our existence. We don't know what it means. We don't even often think about it. We don't even often begin to question, what does that mean? I exist? What is existence itself? What is that? To be. The miracle of it is profound, and we are nowhere near in any science to understanding it. We don't even know how to define it. If you read these books, and there are many, many thick tomes on consciousness written, and the first thing everyone will say is, we don't even know how to define it. We don't even know what it is, despite all of these books and libraries of information that we've gathered around its causes and effects. But the isness of it itself, we can't even touch. At that ocean of desire limitless, this is where we are, standing at the edge of this external ocean. What is it? This ocean of desire limitless. Appear shining waves, countless and infinite. Oh, what a power manifold they are! Of what forms myriad, of what repose, of what movements varied, who can reckon? In it arise and reside what beings, quick with life, dull, lifeless, unnumbered, and pleasure and pain, disease, birth and death. Verily the Sun is He is the ray. Nay, the Sun is He, and He is the ray. There's a beautiful hint in that this dance of life, this mind-boggling, literally, this mind-boggling experience of being fed the infinite through the five portals, trying to eat our way to realization, to fullness in this world of the Tantalus. There is one promise behind it all. That is this ray, this light that presents it all to us. I'm going to take you somewhere now with Hiroshimo's next piece of art, which is called his cinema series. And he was absolutely mystified with this idea of how can you tell a movie in a single frame? How can you contain the entire story in a single frame? And here are his three images that he did. This is a single shutter shot of an entire movie, 3 different movies in 3 different cinemas. And each one, you look at it, and there's a wonderful implication in this. He does a marvelous job as an artist of taking us to the infinite, because you have here the screen of the mind, which can show any movie, and every one of us is looking at the same screen, but seeing a different movie in our mind. It's the story of your life. If I ask you who you are, you tell me what you're watching on the screen. But you're telling me about a movie. You're telling me about a presentation of thought to an infinite soul. You're not telling me about the soul. You're not telling me about the ray of light. Now this, what he's showing here, it's not a white light showing on a screen. This is the entire movie caught in a single shutter flash. So he opened the shutter on the camera at the beginning of the movie and snapped it shut at the end of the movie. And can you tell the difference between the movies? All 3 of these theaters showing different movies look exactly the same. They are only a radiant white light. They are love. In fact, they are that light. The essence of the whole movie is light. And that is the reality. That's where the satiation comes from. That's where the fullness and the satisfaction of realization comes from. to see and know yourself not as the particulars of your movie, not to be so completely inundated by your thinking and looking for one distraction after another to avoid the pain of the experience of hunger, but to go beyond, to understand your life in a single frame. When you add the entire sum of your life up, it will be shining white, beautiful light. He goes on to say in his poem to a friend, I, born heir to the infinite, are you. Within the heart is the ocean of love. Give away. Whosoever asks return, his ocean dwindles down to a mere drop. That is the Tantalus cup. You see, he's giving you the solution to this horror of life for the selfish being. He says your nature is that white light, that ocean of love that's within. It's not outside through these 5 portals. It's within. And the summation of your life in every experience, in every projection, in every distraction that you've had, every experience that you add together, in the end is white light, brilliant and infinite. Love itself. And the secret for your sating, the secret for your slaking, he says, give. Give and give and give. He says, if you even try to take or ask for a return, this infinite ocean will shrink and disappear into a drop. It's very interesting how time brings us together and teaches different things at different times. At the same time that this idea was coming from his teaching and from Vivekananda's poem here, I was reading a book on the non-dual thinking within the Christian tradition. And within that story, there was a vision that Saint Benedict had way back around 200 AD or so. And Saint Gregory recounts that to us. He says, while the disciples were still asleep, now this is Saint Benedict, happening to Saint Benedict. While the disciples were still asleep, Benedict, the man of the Lord, was already awake, anticipating the hour of night prayer. He was standing before his window praying to the all-powerful Lord, when suddenly, at that hour of the night, he saw a flash of light which chased away the darkness and showed with such splendor that its brightness would have dimmed the brightness of the day. And while he looked at it, something extraordinary happened. As he later recounted it, the entire world shrank into itself before his eyes, like a single ray of sun. So here within the Christian tradition, you have him experiencing exactly what the Rig Veda was describing, that God is the ray. He is the single ray of light that illuminates this entire world. And this entire world can be summed up in that gleaming white cinema screen that catches the whole of it at once to present to you. That light is giving. It is your source of everything within, and it is the beauty of everything without. Outside of you, all of these things coming in through the portals of 5, they're nothing. They're nothing but a reflection of that one ray of light that exits you, your consciousness, your awareness of awareness, your awareness of being. This beautiful manifestation that is just pouring out of us all the time. And when we mistake the reflections as being the thing itself, when we again and again and again and again think that we're going to get something, and all we get is a momentary distraction that leaves a mark, a path in the mind that leads nowhere, that never gives us that satisfying thing we were looking for, that never fills us up. Swamiji goes on in his Raja Yoga to teach us how to come to the edge of the mind and to remain at the edge of mind without getting stuck, without getting caught in it. He says the easiest way in Raja Yoga to get hold of the mind is to sit quiet. Sit quiet. Quiet all the way through, not just in a quiet room orally, but a quiet place inside, a stillness. Come to a stillness and let the mind drift where it will for a while. Just watch it. Don't get involved in it. Don't analyze it. Don't give it meaning. Don't ponder something in particular. Just watch it like you do sometimes the TV. Just sit there and just turn it on and just watch it. Just see it, you know. Hold fast to the idea, I am the witness watching my mind drifting. What's he telling you to pay attention to? That ray of light, which is you. So watch the movie knowing that it's a movie. Watch the play of light. Remove the meaning from it. Just watch the play of light. Don't follow the theme. Don't follow the plot of the movie. Don't feel sad for the characters. Don't even see the characters. Just see the play of light on the white screen. Let it go. Hold fast to the idea, I am the witness watching my mind drifting. The mind is not I. Okay, how many times have you been told that? And yet, if I were to ask you even now, who are you? What comes to you? What comes to you is exactly what Vivekananda here is telling you is not you. You are not that story. You are not that movie. You are the light that is shining through the cellophane, that's reflecting that movie of your mind, that all-encompassing self. The mind is not I. Then see it think as if it were a thing entirely apart from you. So just watch it go. We have this horrible idea that we are the mind, that we choose what we think. And in fact, you do not. It is a wheel of samsara. And how do you know this? We've talked about it before. Because you cannot have a thought that is not directly related to the previous thought. That is how you know that the mind is not you. You are not in charge. It is the wheel of samsara that's rolling down the hill, set into motion by your mistaken idea that you are a particular, that you are separate from the whole, that you are not one with everything, that you believed yourself to be a body and a mind, and that mind began to tumble, and that mind is still tumbling. And you hold on to it, continually changing your story to match the one that's in the mind, to maintain this idea of self, this idea of ego, that in fact doesn't exist, that doesn't have a reality. You are not the mind. You are not its stories or its contents. You are the light reflecting off of its screen. And the nature of you is love. And the purpose of your life is to give, to care. Identify yourself with God, never with matter or the mind. There's your instruction direct. How ambiguous? Not at all ambiguous. Very clear. Did you come for something new today? There's nothing new. You need to realize the old. You need to hear it and understand it with eyes that can see and ears that can hear. There is nothing in this sordid world for you. There is nothing here but the lie of the Tantalus cup, the curse of being in the midst of plenty and always being hungry, because you have forgotten that you are the container of it all, ever free and ever pure. Picture the mind as a calm lake stretched before you, and the thoughts that come and go as bubbles rising and breaking on its surface. Make no effort to control the thoughts, but watch them and follow them in imagination as they float away. This will gradually lessen the circles, for the mind ranges over wide circles of thought, and those circles widen out into ever-increasing circles, as in a pond when we throw a stone into it. We want to reverse this process, and starting with a huge circle, make it narrow until at last we can fix the mind on one point and make it stay there. Now, how does this happen? You see, as you watch the mind, knowing the nature of it, knowing that it's only a series of thoughts, a series of phantoms that have no subsistence, that have no actual inherent reality, they are only reflections. As that becomes clearer as you watch them, your interest in them will diminish. When you come to know the nature of things, that things cannot give you what they promise, that they are not what they seem, When you look knowing this, you become uninterested in them. And the natural response is renunciation. And with that dispassion and that renunciation comes the stillness of mind. The rolling wheel of samsara begins to slow. The ripples in the pond begin to lessen. And the stones of me and mine that we're plunking into it cause less and less disturbance as our interest in it diminishes. So take that out of philosophy for a moment, because it's not new for you. You've heard probably 1,000 swamis tell you this in 1,000 ways, if not swamis, ministers, teachers, friends through the ages. Why are you still looking in the world for your satisfaction? Why are you still running after the things of ego to think that they will make something of you? Why? Your realization is hung on the very nail of understanding there is nothing of interest to you there. Your realization hangs on that singular point that you are not the mind. You are not this story. You are a ray of light, divine, ever free, whose only purpose is to manifest, to love, to give, to care. Hold to the idea, I am not the mind. I see that I am thinking. I am watching my mind act. And each day, the identification of yourself with thought and feeling will grow less, until at last you can entirely separate yourself from that mind and actually to know it to be apart from yourself. Finally, you can relax at the edge of the seaside and see the beauty and wonder of the wholeness and know that that is you. And that beauty and that wonder is what you are. It is not what you are seeing. You are not separate and apart from that. And at that moment, it will all shrink to a single ray of light within you. No longer you in a world, but the world in you. And you will be filled, fuller than any imagination could have ever managed, fuller than any idea or thought that used to plague your mind could ever have promised. Your nature, infinite, pure, and ever free. The way that Hiroshi comes to this is this final picture that he takes called the Sea of Buddhas. And this is in the temple of Sanju Shangendo in Japan. And it's just 1,000 or so Buddhas arranged in a large temple room. And he had them go and turn off all of the electric lights and fluorescents and spotlights and whatnot that's usually there for the tourists, and to return it just to the natural flame lighting that the ancients would have seen when they created this beautiful idea, where the nature of this seascape is represented in a very pure form, still separate and apart, but now the idea has solidified. An ocean of Buddhas, an ocean of compassion, an ocean of love, mirrored in 1,000 single identities. The Buddha in all of us, in each one of us. So Sugimoto takes that journey, walks it all the way through, and comes to this realization, this understanding. He sees the beauty and understands the beauty that he's trying to capture in the frame of a camera, to point to it and say, look, 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 look. And that put in my mind the idea of how many of these sages have seen, have understood this ocean of Buddhas, have known their nature, have plumbed the depth of their mind. And so for the last little bit here, I'm just going to read some of them, starting with, of course, our beloved Sri Ramakrishna. He talks about this pain. That's where he starts, where Vivekananda started in the first stanza of To a Friend. That unbearable pain of being when you don't know who you are. That horrible pain and suffering and misery of hunger as we watch things give birth and die, fall between our fingers, unmeaning. He says there was an unbearable pain in my heart, because I could not get a vision of the mother. Just as a man wrings out a towel with all of his strength to get the water out of it, so I felt as if my heart and mind were being wrung out. I began to think I should never see Mother. I was dying of despair. In agony, I said to myself, what is the use of living? You see, that's the terror that we face. It's the terror that keeps us running after things that only distract us. Because this is the reality of material life. There is no reason to live it as a material object, as a material body and a material mind. There is no point to it. There is no meaning to it. There is only distraction. That is all it can offer. And this is why we keep ourselves distracted, because this is the fundamental reality of material life. There is no reason to live it. There is nothing there. And if we do not strive to have this realization, to face this agony, this unbearable pain of being in this unknowing state, in this state of delusion, in this state of ignorance, if we do not come to terms with the pain and with the suffering and the emptiness of it, we cannot see the next stage. We cannot see the light of the movie. We cannot see that gleaming singular ray of pure love. I said to myself, what is the use of living this life? And suddenly my eyes fell on the sword that hangs in the temple. I decided to end my life with it, then and there. Like a madman, I ran to it and I seized it. And then I had a marvelous vision of the mother. And I fell down unconscious. It was as if houses, doors, temples, and everything else vanished altogether. Maybe like something St. Benedict saw, everything collapsing into a single point. I fell down unconscious, and what I saw was an infinite, shoreless sea of light, a sea that was consciousness. However far and in whatever direction I looked, I saw shining waves, one after another, coming toward me. They were raging and storming upon me, that raging storm of I am, that Swamiji talks about. With great speed, very soon they were upon me. They made me sink down into unknown depths. I panted, struggled, and lost consciousness. The Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything. She showed me that everything was full of consciousness. The image was consciousness. The altar was consciousness. The water vessels were consciousness. The door sill was consciousness. The marble floor was consciousness. All was consciousness. I found everything inside the room soaked, as it were, in bliss. The bliss of the divine. The bliss of God. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him also I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. That was why I fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother on the shrine. I clearly perceived that all of this was the Divine Mother, even that cat. So you see what happens when you accept the pain of this experience of ignorance and you cry out in that shocking cry, that one cry that makes it through the ignorance, splits the veil, and comes to the mother's ear. And there you see the nature of it all. You see the real essence of the movie, the play of light, the play of love. In all of its myriad of forms is you, comes from you. It is a song, a continual hymn, a continual depth of worship that you have floated over in ignorance because of your fear in accepting the loss of this tiny independent ego, this little self that says, I exist separate from everything else. I exist separate from God. I exist separate from love. How can that be? How can there be anything there for you? There is nothing in this sordid world for you, O great lover and unselfish being. Brahman, he said, is the only reality. What does that mean? Ever pure, ever illumined, ever free, beyond the limits of time, space, and causation. This is you that he's talking about. This is you, the undistracted you, who has been able to break their addiction to mind, who have been able to break their addiction to their self-importance, to the idea of I am this instead of I am that. Though apparently divided by names and forms through the inscrutable power of Maya, that enchantress who makes the impossible possible, Brahman is really one and undivided. If it's one and undivided, why are you thinking of something else right now? Why do you think it's over there? Why have you conceptualized it? He's talking about you. When a seeker merges in the beatitude of samadhi, he does not perceive time and space or name and form, the offspring of Maya. He doesn't see what you're looking at right now. He doesn't see this limitation, this smallness, this meeting out of the infinite through 5 little doses of senses. That's not who you are. That's not what you see. You're watching a mind right now. That's why you see this. Pull yourself away from it. Pull yourself away from this mind. And this is what you will see. This is what the Divine Mother will show you. You will find the world of name and form vanishing into void. And the puny ego, he calls you puny in your current self, puny, utterly insignificant. This center of the universe to us in our ignorance is puny and meaningless. There's nothing there. Dissolving in Brahman consciousness, you will realize your identity with Brahman, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. That is your promise. And that is the one reason to be alive. That is the one reason to go on. That is the goal of life, the goal of being as such. To come to know your nature as that single ray of divinity, of love, unlimited, ever free, ever pure, unbounded by time, space, and causation, the illuminator of your mind, but not its content. Quoting the Upanishad, Totapuri said, that knowledge is shallow, by which one sees, or hears, or knows another. Do you see? These endless readings, these endless lectures, these endless chantings, the knowledge that comes from those, he says, is shallow. It's not what we're not understanding is it's not the words we're looking for. It's not the information that we're looking for. It's the reality that inspired the words that we're trying to touch. It's the reality of what they're trying to convey through a medium through which it cannot be conveyed. You're not going to learn it in a lecture. You're not going to learn it from a book. The lectures and the books are there only as the practice of stilling the mind, to give you purchase, to sit and stand somewhere that's separate and apart from this constant onslaught of thought in all of its variations. That knowledge is shallow which one sees, which one hears, or knows another. What is shallow is worthless and never can give real felicity. What is there in this world of the senses for you? What do you think is going to fill you? But the knowledge by which one does not see another, or hear another, or know another, which is beyond duality, is great, and through such knowledge one attains that infinite bliss. How can the mind and senses grasp that which shines in the heart of all as the eternal subject? How can the mind grasp it? How will you ever see it in words? How will you know it? Stand at the edge of the seashore. Stand at the edge of the two infinities meeting, and let them collapse into a single ray of light, and know that you are that.